Welcome back to the Film Survivor. Today we are starting a new series in our channel called The Exploration of Genre-ation, where we look at different subgenres of genres of motion pictures and learn a little bit about the history, influences and the magic that make every subgenre special in its own unique way. The first genre which we will be exploring in this series is my personal favorite, horror. In each episode, we will look deeply into the subgenre of horror and what makes them so terrifying yet so mesmerizing. So, without further delay, let's delve into the subgenre of this episode. There is no easy way to define the genre, so to speak. Supernatural horror, in essence, deals with supernatural phenomena such as ghost or spirit or some sort of phantasm. The main plot can be also surrounded around supernatural objects such as ancient treasure or bogs or even boards, most commonly Ouija boards. Most of the supernatural films have strong elements of religion as well because as we know God and demons goes hand in hand. Most supernatural films generally don't depict much gore or violence, but of course, there are always exceptions. Supernatural films generally deal with possessions, exorcisms, demons, and ghosts. Supernatural films, in its social commentary, are generally a mix of what's morally right or wrong. There's some family elements added to it, and of course, a battle of good versus evil. The idea of ghosts and demons is nothing new and has been around as long as the art of storytelling itself. Before debuting on the big screen, supernatural horror has been the trump card of our collective nightmares through the medium of books, plays, and of course, camp tales. The Castle of Otranto is widely considered as the first Gothic supernatural novel. When it comes to the big screen, supernatural films became prevalent in late 1920s and early 1930s with German expressionist films such as F.W. Munro's Nosferatu and The Haunted Castelier. Robert Wieni's The Cabinet of Caligari. Fun fact, it's also considered the first true horror film by the famous film critic Roger Ebert. Let me know in the comment section down below if you want me to do a video on German expressionisms and its influence on today's motion pictures. By the 1940s, the craze of supernatural films as a whole started to phase out a little as the emergence of other genres such as psychological horror stilted its growth. Nevertheless, the genre wasn't truly dead as despite not being at the apex of audiences' favorite horror subgenre, the presence of supernatural horror could still be felt in many psychological horror films of the 1940s like The Ghost of Frankenstein in 1941 and Mahal in 1949, which fun fact is considered to be the first Bollywood horror film. Supernatural horror genre never really died out because there is something so appealing about the idea of fighting the otherworldly phantasms such as ghosts and demons which excites the audiences irrespective of the generation. While not at the top of audiences' horror consumption platter as it used to be, it always found its way to our sick, twisted hearts. As haunted house films in 1950 like Francis in the Haunted House in 1956 and House on the Haunted Hill in 1959 were considerable success at the box office and were loved by critics too. 1960 saw somewhat of a comeback for the supernatural horror films as films like Carnival of Souls in 1962, The Haunting in 1963, and Rosemary's Baby in 1968 used supernatural elements in it. Because they dealt with greater topics and used supernatural setting as a plot medium instead of the main conflict in the film. For example, Rosemary's Baby is a film about mistrust, lust, vanity, relationships, and gaslighting more than being a film about, well, ghosts and demons. Whereas Carnival of Souls deals with the heavy topics such as survivor's guilt, religion, trauma, and the human urge to run away from their demons instead of facing them head on. 1970 saw the comeback of the genre with full force with the films such as The Exorcist in 1973, The Omen and Carrie in 1976, and The Shining in 1980, being a huge critical and commercial successes. Excitingly enough, The Exorcist went on to become the first horror film to be nominated for Academy Award for Best Pictures in 1973, proving the love and the influence it had on its audiences all over the globe. 1980s, 90s, and 2000s were basically the worst time to be the fan of the genre as slashers and teen horror superseded its popularity. Nevertheless, there were some occasional treasures such as Poltergeist in 1982, Ringu in 1998, and The Devil's Backbone in 2001. 2010 was a far better time for the fans of the genre as it came back with a bang with films such as the Conjuring series, Insidious series, Sinister, and The Babadook in 2014. The influence of supernatural horror is quite clear on the apex genre of horror right now, which is the elevated horror, as it is very clearly seen in the films such as Hereditary or The Witch. Here are my 5 recommendations when it comes to supernatural horror films. And just to be clear here, I'm not saying that these are the 5 objectively best supernatural films or anything, because I don't believe there is ever best anything when it comes to art, as art is subjective and your enjoyment deeply depends on you as well. I have chosen these 5 films because they cover all the subgenres of supernatural horror and gives you the whole picture of the genre. So without further delay, my films are Nosferatu, The House on the Haunted Hill, Carnival of Souls, The Exorcist, and The Devil's Backbone. So to conclude this video, supernatural horror will always remain the go-to genre for many people when it comes to horror. It may go through its phases when it comes to its popularity, but it will never truly die down as the curiosity of the unknown is too tempting to ignore. So watching the video and like the video as well, you liked it, and subscribe to the channel for if you find content like these appealing. This is the Film Survivor and see you in the next Genre-ation.